reestablish the communications for our meeting. If that doesn't happen, I imagine you'll send us an email and try to pick another time to get going.
That'd be correct, yes.
Okay, great. So the Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 Board of Appeals meeting is in session. It's going to be a virtual meeting. As part of the protocol today, since it's a virtual meeting where we typically say we ask for yay or nay, let's do that consecutively. Each person do that so that we can be on record to show that we've done that. So, Scott, shall we start with a roll call?
Okay. David Krzyzewski?
Here.
Okay. Kyle Lombardo?
Here.
Jim McWhorter? Ron Roque? Here. His mic's off, but I see you said it. Tommy Willis?
Here.
There. And Tricia Hatley?
Here.
There she is. All righty.
Okay, new business for the day. I'd like to introduce the two new board members we have, Tommy Willis and Tricia Hatley. Welcome aboard. Next new business we have is motion to elect board chairman and vice chairman. Do we have any nominations from the board for chairman? I think the protocol, I'm willing to accept it. So if someone wants to, if they want to keep me as chairman, you can make that motion.
I'll nominate David.
Okay. Do we have a motion for vice?
I nominate Kyle.
Okay. Do we have any further nominations from the board? If there are no further nominations, do we have a motion to approve the nominations of David Krzyzewski for chairman and Kyle Lombardo for vice chair?
I so move.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, so if we can consecutively say aye or nay for approving that motion. Start with Tommy.
Aye.
Ron Roque.
Aye.
Tricia.
Aye.
And Kyle.
Aye.
And Krzyzewski, aye. So the motions are approved for the nominations. I guess the next thing would be those in favor of electing David Krzyzewski for chair, aye or nay? Tommy?
Aye.
Ron Roque?
Aye.
Tricia Hartley?
Aye.
And Kyle Lombardo?
Aye.
The motions for electing Kyle vice chair. Tommy?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Tricia?
Aye.
And Kyle Lombardo?
Aye.
Krzyzewski, aye. The ayes have it. David Krzyzewski will remain chairman and Kyle Lombardo will remain vice chair. I believe all the members have received meeting minutes of August 12th, 2020. Are there any concerns, questions, or comments regarding those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
If there are no questions, Kyle made a motion to approve. Do we have a second to approve those meeting minutes?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor to approve the minutes? Tommy?
Aye.
Ron Roque?
Aye.
Trish?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Krzyzewski, aye. Minutes are approved. And Scott, you had on there the duties of powers of the board members reading. That's a 8-page document or so. I think we can neglect reading that. I urge all members to read those that in the packet, and as well as the sections in the IBC in Chapter 1 regarding our duties and powers. as part of our duties. So the new cases today is case BOAB 2021-00001, the appeal of Matt Thomas, Smith and Pickle, from decision of the code official for noncompliance with Chapter 3, Section 302.6 supplement of the International Existing Building Code 2015 and Chapter 10, Section 1019.3 of the IBC Code 2015 as adopted by the City of Oklahoma City, pertaining to the required shaft enclosures at 200 Northeast 23rd Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Would the applicant state their name and tell us about your case, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for allowing us to be here today. So I'm Matt Thomas with Smith and Pickle Construction. As you described, this is regarding 200 Northeast 23rd Street, which is the project at the old Armory building at the state capitol for Coop Ales. Daniel Mercer, representing Coop Ales, is on the call, as well as Jennifer Knight with Spur Design architecture team involved. What we are requesting is we have basically a 3-story building, and we have an existing building. We have some historic intents we're trying to accomplish with SHPO and NPS, and there are some existing unenclosed stairwells that we are requesting relief to keep those stairwells exposed and not enclose those. And we have provided basically a documentation of a report from Pool Fire Design for doing a smoke evac system that will allow for safe egress of the building, even with those stairwells not enclosed. In short, that's the majority of our requests. There's a lot of technicalities to all this, of course. I think that's our summary really fast, David.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments, questions for Matt regarding this request from the board members?
Well, I'll start. Matt, I noticed that the document provided by Pool has shown that the stairwells in question, at least 2 of the stairwells, I believe you're asking for all 4 stairwells to remain open. Is that correct?
That's correct. Jennifer, please add to this if you can. I believe only 2 of them, by initial interpretation of the code, were required to be enclosed.
Correct.
Okay.
And so the request is to ask for all 4 of them to remain open, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In the report that was done by Pool, I see Mr. Noel, our CEO, on there. That report appeared to indicate that the stairwells were remaining closed. Is that correct? Is that the way you did your report, Dominic?
No, hi everybody. This is Dominic Noel with Pool Fire Protection. That is incorrect. There is some verbiage in the report that alludes to all of the stairs being open, and that is how the model was set up. There is one image that showed glazing, but that is not how the model was run, and this report does not provide results on any of the essentially open stairs being enclosed. The only caveat to that is we do have deployable opening protectives at the 3rd level that we accounted for as far as the smoke level descent that we needed to accommodate the required safe egress time.
And those were the smoke curtains?
Yes, sir.
Since we're on what areas were included in the study, did you also include the areas adjacent to the atrium in the area included in your study? In other words, the the sleeping rooms and then the assembly areas on the, what appears to be the east side of the building?
And so when you say in our study, are you talking about where we had basically opening protectives and or some fire resistance rated construction, that was not included in the overall effects of the smoke control system and the fire modeling. However, when we went into egress modeling, all those were accounted for. So, I mean, you can see from the report when we did egress modeling, we had a delay of the sleeping units at a substantial amount more than anybody that would be exposed to the atrium that would have a line of sight for where those smoke plumes were. So it's, to answer your question, it's twofold. Like, yes, they were incorporated in the model, but those areas were actually separated from our actual atrium space when you're talking about the room.
Okay, the reason I asked the question was because in section 404, it talks about adjacent areas, and when you start talking about exit access and not exits, it does talk about where you start your exit access from and whether or not those areas are included in the overall volume of the smoke control system. So I was just trying to find out if those areas, it sounds like the volumes of those areas were not included in the smoke control system.
That is correct.
Okay.
Look, Kyle, let me interrupt and maybe start asking some general questions so that we all can get up to speed. I know you've spent some time on this. Is the first floor open area, is that, and this is directed generally to the applicants and any of you speak up that it feels appropriate, is that an assembly space? What is that first floor space that is within the walls of that, I'll call it the atrium space? What is the use group?
So there's two different assembly type, or excuse me, occupancy types going on in there. We've got an enclosed tap room on the first floor, so business occupancy, and then in the open area that's open to the 3 stories, that's the brewery aspect of it. So that, oh, Dom, please refresh my memory. Is that industrial?
Industrial light.
Okay, just so I understand in the group, I know we don't have drawings up, but I've got drawings that everybody I think has drawings in their packet. On the, I think it's the south end, it looks like there's a glass wall that divides the open armory space into something that looks like it has a bar in it. Is that the tap room?
Yes, sir, and that's on the north end.
That's north, okay, I'm sorry. Tap room. And then so the remaining space in there is an assembly space, is that correct?
No, on the first floor, no, that's not assembly. That's the brewery side of it, so industrial.
So the big space is where all the tanks and all the brewing happens. Okay.
Yes. And
that's not showed on the drawings. That's just additional stuff that's going to be in there.
Yes.
So that's the light industrial. So the tap room would, and that's where people congregate to drink the beer.
Yes, sir.
So that would be any food in there? Food served?
Daniel, can you answer that?
Yep. Due to lack of vent hoods and things like that, we're basically talking countertop prep, coffee, a little bit of food prep coming from the restaurant, which is in one of the kind of annex sections outside the atrium. But no hooded cooking or baking going on in the taproom space. Okay,
and it's I'm not trying to corner you. I'm just trying to understand the occupancy. That if any food's served, it would be an A2 occupancy versus an A3 without food. So that's why I was looking at that. So we're an A2 in the tap room and some kind of light industrial, I would assume. Tommy, would be, and Kyle, what the actual area for the brewery would be?
It's my understanding. Yeah.
Light industrial. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we have it reflected on our life safety plans as well.
Okay, and then on the second floor we have another assembly space. Is that correct? And it's part of it's outdoors? Lead me through that one, please, if you can.
So on the second floor, on the north end, you've got an assembly area that is for waiting for the restaurant that's on the east side of the atrium space. And then the rest of it is open to the first floor below.
Okay. I saw in some renderings that it looked like there was an outdoor beer garden or something like that. Is that something that was early on, it didn't make it through the design, or is that still there?
There is an outdoor that is on the far east side of the building. It's east of the restaurant, and it's the rooftop for the first floor below.
Okay. And so that is a seating area.
Yes, sir.
So that's also an A3. So we have A3 on the second floor, A3 on the first floor. Okay, all right, okay. And then on the west side, on the first floor, it looks like offices on the west side on the first floor, outside of the brewery area. Is that correct?
We've got offices on the west side on the north end, and then storage on the west side on the south end.
And what on the west side of the south end? Sorry?
Storage.
Storage, okay. Are there guest rooms on the first floor on the west side, or just the second level?
Just the second.
Okay. Okay, I think that gets my head around how the spaces are utilized. So a general question for the applicants. Pool did the smoke control system. Is the smoke control system a requirement for a building with an atrium space?
Yeah, so in short, we initially went down the path of utilizing the deployable protectives to make this to where it was only open to 2 floors. So then we wouldn't have to go down the path of a smoke control system per IBC. However, then we started going into the evaluation of enclosing the exits and what that would mean to the historic preservation. And jointly with the architect, we determined that fire modeling and a performance alternative would be a potential to see if we could get that approved by the board to not enclose those. So,
hey Dom, I have a theoretical question for you. Does the building say that we did not have a third floor? Did the open stairs, did it meet all the requirements to have the open stairs if, say, it was just 2 floors? Is it really the third floor that threw us into the enclosure requirement?
yes, but also the amount of open stairs that you could have when you have, you know, sending 50% internal to the space and how they really exit out of the building. So it's a combination of the two. So in short, it's the rating of being the third floor and kind of how those are all interconnected around the perimeter.
Okay, but if this was a 2-story building, this would be a completely different conversation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's really the third floor that, to me, is of concern.
Okay, I didn't quite understand the answer when I asked, is the smoke control system required for the 3-story building with the atrium? Is that required by the IBC to have smoke control with a 3-story building with an atrium?
Yes, when all 3 levels are open to that atrium.
And that's the building we have. That's the animal we're dealing with.
Correct. However, there's a caveat there. We are utilizing opening protectives, deployable opening protectives that essentially separate that 3rd level from the atrium space, with exception. Oh, go ahead.
And what are those protectives?
They're rated deployable protectives that roll down within a 60-second time frame to separate basically the corridor from the 3rd level from that atrium space.
Scott or anyone else, Tommy, maybe you, is that an acceptable alternative to
The smoke
enclosures?
control.
No, for the enclosure, he says they're doing that for enclosures purposes. An active enclosure, is acceptable versus a fire partition, fire barrier, or firewall?
For an atrium, yes. And so I understand you correct, Dom. So you're saying without the initial thought was to not have a smoke control system and to separate the third floor. So am I understanding it correct that the smoke control system was installed as part of an equivalency to help with removing the protective enclosures? Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
if, say, hypothetically, we had enclosures for these exit enclosures and they were all 1 hour required, then we would still need a smoke control system if the 3 levels were open to the atrium. However, if we would use those deployable protectives and remove one of those levels and we would only have 2, you would not need an engineered smoke control system.
And David, I do agree with that. We have used that concept.
Okay. But fundamentally, I'm just trying to get this clear, because what we're trying to do, and I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can, we're looking at your requested variances for leaving these stairs open. We're looking for equivalencies in life safety or hazard protection. So I just want to make sure that the equivalencies we're looking at are appropriate for the issue that the variance is requesting. In layman's terms, that the smoke control is used to change the code regarding enclosed stairs versus smoke control required for a 3-story atrium building. I think I see a big distinction there, because we're kind of double dipping on this variance. One is for smoke controls there. If the smoke control is there to alleviate the enclosed stair, versus the smoke control is required for this 3-story building. You know, it's somewhat a chicken and egg thing, but I think there needs to be a distinction there. And I want to make sure that what the framework we're thinking about distinguishes those and doesn't let those 2 paths cross. I hope that made some sense. It was a little bit of.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay. So once again, because our building is 3-story, we're required smoke control, and the smoke control does not. What am I trying to say this? I'm concerned that the smoke control is there for the 3-story building as required by code, and we're not getting an equivalency for enclosing the stairs, because it's 50% of the stairs. It's not all the stairs. So I think by code, Scott, I think you would agree with that, and Tommy, it's 50% of the stairs would have to be enclosed per the code, enclosed to an exterior exit of the building. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'll be quiet for a few minutes. So in your applicant statement, where's the statement? My papers are running together. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. I may not approve. Okay, there it is. We're trying to avoid enclosing the stairways because we're looking for historic tax credits. National Park Service does not want us to provide any new walls. So that baffles me a little bit. I'm going to maybe just understand that. It looks like the tap room we've got 100 and some lineal feet of new wall that's all glass. We've broken areas up into offices and into sleeping rooms, which are new walls. We've added elevators, which are new walls. So how does that statement jive with all those new walls and this new glass wall? What I'm wondering is why couldn't we enclose 2 of those stairs? We're doing a 100-foot glass wall. We're doing all these other things. What's prohibiting us from doing that?
Matt, do you want me to speak to that? Or Daniel?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. The National Park Service standards and the State Historic Preservation Office standards are mostly concerned with visual occlusion of existing architecture elements within a structure. And so the stairwell problem is about, even being glass, is the visual occlusion of the stairwell itself, which historically for roughly 80 years has been open. You referenced the tap room wall that goes across the atrium, but the tap room wall in and of itself isn't visually occluding a use of a space like the stairwell. And the tap room in and of itself, as Jennifer can attest to, and the rest of the team at Spur Architecture, we had to change and considerably amend how the entries in and out of that space work, and specifically when you're on the first floor, when you walk in. A good example of that visual occlusion rule or standard with the Park Service and SHPO is that when you walk into that tap room, you'll actually look upward and there is a massive carve out of the tap room so that the ceiling of the armory isn't visually occluded. Same things when you join in and out of the stairwells themselves and go into the tap room, there are cutouts along the top of that, so the visual occlusion, isn't there. And so that's the biggest issue with the Park Service and the SHPO. And these tax credits are worth roughly $12 million of a $39 million project, and they're frankly the only thing that make the entire project financially feasible. So yeah, it's the visual occlusion issue as the Park Service and the SHPO standards.
Yeah, I can understand your desire to have those tax credits. I can see the project not going with that. I'm just concerned that. Well, we can continue on. I can talk more about that later.
So I'm curious, have you actually filed an application and have they responded to this idea of enclosing 2 of the stairs?
We have filed all of the existing documents, but Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, the original submissions did not include the glass enclosures because of the initial feedback we got from the Park Service and their basically dictation that not occur, right?
Correct.
So I mean, you specifically asked them if that 2 of the stairs were enclosed, they would not grant you, you couldn't become part of the historic register then. Because right now, if I'm not wrong, it's not on the register. Is that correct?
It is on the register, and so that's effectively what we call a Part 1 application and approval, and Part 2 application is effectively the approval of initial drawings. And so Part 1 and Part 2 are both approved, and the way this works in kind of an exchange manner when whether it's the SHPO initially working on the approval and submitting it to the Park Service, or SHPO working with our historic preservation consultants who have dozens of years of experience throughout Oklahoma and nationally. And the standard, historically around open staircases as well, and the precedent is well established. And so when that kind of exchange and verbal commentary started about 2 years ago with the SHPO and the Park Service, it was very early in the process that was brought up by Historic Preservation and Design Studio, which are our consultants to the SHPO and the Park Service. And it was just an immediate item that, because of code requirements for modern build and renovation, we knew that was going to be an issue with the Park Service. And so this is really the necessary step to ensure maintenance of that Part 2 approval without any enclosure.
So, so does that mean they specifically said no glass enclosures either?
Yes.
Though your application says that the reason no glass enclosures are because the cost is astronomical.
No, that is not stated in the application. The glass enclosures are not on the application because they were verbally discussed before the application was submitted.
I think the application says that the glass was, the reason no glass was because the cost was astronomical.
Take the application for the Board of Appeals.
Pardon?
You're referring to the application for the Board of Appeals, not the application for SHPO.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
So if I'm understanding, again, this probably goes to Dom, but so we're hoping that the curtains provide a sort of an equivalency to get us to a 2-story atrium. Correct?
So, yeah, the curtains initially were provided to get to a 2-story atrium. That is correct.
And that
With
way,
that being said, you would have, say that again?
And that way, the smoke evacuation, you were thinking, could then be used as and applied in a way that could be an equivalency for something else.
Well, not exactly. So the way the code works, in the event, once I separate one of the 3 stories from that atrium, I no longer have to do smoke control.
That's right.
So the
Right,
smoke,
that's what I'm saying.
Control, yeah, exactly. So that's why. So that's why we had approached this with the deployable opening protection from day one, because we wanted to avoid that. So then.
If the enclosure of the upper floor gets you to a point where you don't need the smoke control, and now we're going to use the smoke control for something, an equivalency of something else, there are several other components of 404 that have to be met. 404 dealing with the atriums. You know, right now in 404, you meet having the automatic sprinkler systems. You have a fire alarm system. You have enclosure of the upper part of the atrium, so you don't really need a smoke control. You need standby power, which you have. You have to have, by section 404, it requires interior exit stairways for 50% of your exiting. Okay, so the smoke control you're proposing is to do away with 50% of the interior exit stairways, the way I understand what you're proposing right now.
That is correct.
Okay, well, there is one other thing that is not being met by the code, and that's chapter 10, section 1006. And 1006.3 talks about egress from occupied floors, and it talks about both egress travel and then exits. And right now you are proposing a path of egress travel that traverses 3 floors as part of your proposal. And if we consider the smoke control to take care of the 50% of the exits, you still have what I would consider a pretty significant life safety consideration in having a egress path of travel that traverses more than one level.
Right.
So have you guys addressed the fact that your path of egress travel, that it's bound by length, it's bound by width, and it's bound by how many floors you can traverse. by code. And I personally, and Dom, you may know the code better than I do, but I don't know that there's any place in the code that allows you to traverse more than one story in an egress path of travel. I've looked, and that's the first thing I was trying to find to see if there was a way that we could address that portion of the code.
Agreed. Yeah, I think from a definition standpoint, that's when you would fall into a required means of egress, which obviously, since these are our 4 stairwells, these are our required means of egress. But these considerations were accounted for in the time it took to traverse the space, that required safe egress time versus the available safe egress time were all components of that. So in addition to the modeling itself showing that there are other perspectives of this design where we wouldn't have, smoke detection, but at a minimum, we've taken some conservative approaches with photoelectric smoke detectors as well as the opening protectives to show that we have a safe amount of time before that smoke level decreases to an untenable condition.
So Don, you brought up the time when you did your study, your model study, with 4 open stairs. Say somebody is on the 2nd level or 3rd level, and they're trying to exit, and they realize that their direction of exit is heading towards a fire or a smoke event, and they have to turn around and find another way out, reorient themselves, find another way out. I don't know how to model that time, but you probably do. Tommy, you might think about that. So you're heading down a stair and you realize I can't go that route. Now you got to go back up that stair, find another way out. How do you quantify that kind of time versus having a enclosed stair that goes directly to the outside? I'm trying to hang my hat on some way to allow 4 stairs to be opened.
So yeah, so like basically you're provided with some information from the Society of Fire Protection Engineering Handbook that talks about delayed egress and time to traverse level and unlevel components. And all those have built-in safeties within the times that they specify. So that has built-in safeties for whether somebody is in line of sight of that smoke plume or whether it's a delay associated when that alarm goes off. All those components are built into those prescriptive requirements, I would say, for fire modeling, period.
Does it specifically address having to redirect the direction of exiting to a totally new spot, or does it just say it's going to be a slower exiting?
I would have to double check.
I could see the exiting distance in time double, maybe triple, realistically, with someone, especially being groggy in a new place, drinking that good beer, waking up and having
for sure.
a fire event going on and trying to figure your way out of the building.
Yes, they definitely have, like I said, they have pre-movement and they actually have the movement time, and then they have safety factors that are built in for potential disabilities and things of that nature. And our report took all those requirements into effect to show a required amount of time. And the capacities of the smoke control to maintain tenable conditions were very, very conservative, in my expert opinion, and provide a significant amount of time for the occupants to exit the building.
Forgive me, I didn't read our report. I briefed it. How much time from the farthest? What's the longest time period that your study entertained for an occupant exiting the building to the exterior?
Pull that up right now.
Was it around?
Bear with me. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
And
So for
David,
fire scenario 3, the visible conditions at 6 feet above the floor, we have our set, which is the required safe egress time of 761 seconds. So obviously, we take 761 divided by 60. We're looking at a required time to get out of greater than 12 minutes. And that's at the floor level. That's at ground floor fire scenario 3. And that's maintaining upwards of 6 feet of visibility at all times.
Just for my edification, what happens to the smoke on a second level and a third level when you're on those catwalks? What's the smoke doing at those levels?
Well, in that specific fire scenario, I mean, because we did other
No,
fire
in
scenarios.
in the worst case fire scenario of this building in your study, you said the
The
smoke at
worst case
first
fire-
level 6 feet above. What about where the smoke's higher and
So let me go
potentially
I'm gonna go to
denser?
fire scenario 1. Fire scenario 1 had a 6 feet above third floor RSET of 10 minutes. So 600 seconds approximately.
Okay.
So we maintain that smoke control system was designed to maintain that level of visibility for a considerable amount of time.
So did you also check the length of travel from the furthest point on the third floor?
Yep, we did. We've.
And was
that
that from the doorway entering the room, the middle rooms, or was that from the deep within the rooms?
It was always the most remote space within the space. So whether that be the dining area or the actual residential units or the sleeping units. So in the model, that it accounts for if you're sleeping, they're not even moving until approximately 300 seconds. So they're not aware of anything for 5 minutes. So our model took into account that if you're sleeping, you're probably not going to get the adequate notification, even though everybody could probably attest that we will, but they're not moving for 300 seconds in the sleeping units. And then for other spaces that don't have a direct line of sight, those fluctuate depending on where they are between 60 seconds and 200 seconds of a pre-movement time.
So,
and
what was the length of travel from the furthest distance on the third floor to the exit?
Life safety for that one. So the furthest.
Because I think the code limits it to 200 feet within an atrium.
So initially we have 198 feet currently shown from the third level.
And is that from the doorway into a unit, or is that from within the unit?
That's from in 307, it's like the middle residential room on the west side. It's on the left side of the bed, which is kind of like the most remote spot in that room. And then we have another dimension, which is on the right side, the east side, from a dining area that is approximately behind a set of tables. So it's not like the door. It's always we don't take our egress paths from like the door itself.
Okay.
We always try to do the most remote situation there. And technically, from a code perspective, we can provide diagonal routes, like the most reasonable approach to the door and to the exit, but we always do kind of a perpendicular straight line 90 over instead of like a diagonal to the door. So it's conservative in that approach as well.
I'm noticing on my screen that Mike Wilson has joined and has his hand up. Mike, are you here? Do you have a question?
No, I'm falling asleep because no one saw that I had my hand up.
Hey, Mike,
But
how you doing?
I wanted to say,
Mike, how you doing?
doing good. I was here when you started. You didn't notice me here?
No, I didn't.
I didn't notice the hand. I didn't notice the hand.
Anyway, I wanted to notate about the early detection that we had talked about with them about when we can get that smoke detected quicker, not have to wait for it, so that people will notify about it sooner. And that's when we got into the probably photo beam detectors or something like that, that would detect it a lot quicker so that it would let people know faster.
Yeah, that is true. The report highlights that, but we wanted to make sure that we showed the most conservative routes. We know that beam detection and like a Furthest system would significantly reduce the time it took to detect smoke. But we want to kind of propose the worst case scenario and let you know that the sizing of the smoke control system itself was robust enough to accommodate kind of the worst case scenarios. I agree with you. We'll be recommending like a Vesda system, which also is going to be a lot cheaper to maintain than 60 plus detectors at the ceiling. And you could have those sensitivity settings much lower to where the obscuration of smoke itself would set you off to notify your occupants quicker. So I agree. The report highlights that, but we wanted to make sure this model and the actual size of the smoke control was taking in some conservatives.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to mention too, for the hotel rooms where there might be sleeping or otherwise impaired, the code does require the low frequency sounders that are shown to be way more effective at waking people or getting their attention than the regular smokes. So those will be required in those areas. And the last thing I wanted to say was about, if you were to build this brand new, you'd only have to enclose half the stairs. So the code has a provision that specifically allows for historic buildings to be renovated and basically change the use of, do different things, as long as it's deemed to be basically in a safe manner. And that's where this is kind of, instead of just Scott or myself or both of us saying, yes, this is an acceptable alternative to us, that we felt it was more appropriate to have the board look at it and decide if those alternatives were good. On the fire department side, we looked at the fire report and what they were proposing to do, and do feel comfortable with what they're proposing. So that's our 2 cents.
Appreciate it, Mike. I should have saw your hand earlier.
So we've got people on the second level restaurant and outdoor beer garden. What's the population of that area? And are they going through the stairs, the open stairs, or do they have separate stairs out?
No, the population, the total, let me pull that up in the report too. We have like per floor. So everybody's going in one of the stairs, obviously. So those are our egress components. And in regards to, so we're looking at the ground floor obviously has the most, and we're at approximately 640. The second floor has the second most, because you all obviously have your north and south ends occupiable spaces, and that's 580. And then your third floor is right around 220. That's just because you have the two sides. We don't have anything on the north and south ends of that portion of the building that's occupied.
Don't we have areas on the east side of the second floor occupied? additionally?
Yeah. So on the second floor, we like both the north, east, south, and west. They all have occupiable spaces. But once we hit that third floor, it's only on the east and west.
But you said 580 on the second floor. Is that a correct number? You said 580 on the north and south, but I thought there was an east component of that as well.
The second floor total is 588. The ground floor total is 641, and then the third floor total was 224.
Okay.
Can I interject with a few questions here? Hey, Dom, so I see that it looks like in your code sheet that this is a type 2B building, but am I correct that a lot of it's concrete? Do we actually know if it has a higher fire rating than what a type 2B building is?
I could assume yes, but I don't. We didn't do any destructive testing, so we kind of took that little conservative. But yes, it's a lot of it is concrete. A lot of it has that masonry construction, but there's also some wood framing, obviously, and other components in there.
Okay, are the floors concrete? And do you know if they're held up with concrete or if it's structural steel that holds up the floors?
Jennifer, can you add to that? I know the floors are concrete, but I don't know if it's all held up.
The floors are concrete, and then the structure itself is concrete beams, concrete columns.
Okay. So I'm just kind of getting an idea if it's inherently more fire resistant. The structure in itself is inherently more fire resistive than what we have it claimed as, which it appears that the answer is probably yes. I do have some question. Go ahead. You can elaborate on that if you need to.
No, I said that would be correct.
Okay.
Including the roof structure?
The roof structure has wood framing.
Yeah, I think it does.
So the building's not too big.
Jennifer, can you elaborate on that one? I'm not sure.
Can you ask your question again?
I said if the roof structure is wood, it's not too big construction. Therefore, what do we have?
Well, no, the roof structure itself is steel, and then there's wood decking.
Wood decking.
Sorry.
And it's the original wood decking from when the building was built.
So there is a Mike and Scott and Tommy. There is I don't remember the exact requirements of it, but there is an allowance for wood decking in a roof structure if it's above some height. Is that correct? 22 feet or something? Guys?
I'm trying to take a look here unless Wilson knows.
Yeah, it's 20.
It's 20 feet.
It's 20.
But that's above the highest occupied floor, though. Isn't that correct, Mark?
Yes.
I don't know if this is germane to our argument. I just it may be compliant being a 5B or whatever it would end up being.
Okay.
I'm not speaking that. I'm just curious.
Okay. So my second question would be the makeup air. So it looks like that we're using roll-up doors for all the makeup air. Can you confirm that?
That is confirmed. Yep.
Okay. What do we utilize those overhead doors for? Is that I didn't get a good feeling for what they're going to be doing with those.
As far as the use of the building?
Well, in terms of I mean, are they pulling trucks in and out of it? What's the use of those overhead doors?
Yeah, so some of those are towards the loading area, so that there will be some loading and unloading in that space.
Would you know how important makeup area is for one of these systems to function correctly? So this is why I have this line of questioning, because we're inherently using this smoke control system as one of our means to keep the space tenable. So my concern would be, I guess, number one, the functionality of those overhead doors, since we're solely relying on them. Will they operate in an emergency condition, e.g. without power? Or I guess if they don't have power. Secondly, is there any, have you built in any safety factor in any of that makeup air? Like, say that they have a truck parked in the actual opening, is that going to affect our makeup air?
Yeah, we've actually built upwards of 15 to 20% of safety in our makeup air.
Okay. And in terms of the functionality of those those coiling doors, could you kind of run me through how you propose to do those?
Well, we're going to be obviously tied into the fire alarm, but we haven't finalized the actual components of the smoke control and fire alarm design yet. We just know that those have to be operable and they have to be reliable because they're such a critical component of this system.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So those haven't been finalized yet, but I mean, I think we both know the importance of making sure that is vetted and engineered, designed properly.
And you'll be fully involved with that design. Is that correct, Dawn?
I hope so. Ask Jennifer. No, just joking.
Jennifer, will the engineer of record be involved in those decisions?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
Dan, do you have a question? I noticed your hand was up. Did I interrupt you, Tommy?
I just have one more question for Dom. So I've reviewed the packet. I just want confirmation that as the engineer, Dom, do you have confidence that what you have done provides an equivalent or better life safety requirements than the prescriptive requirements of the International Building Code? Do you feel you've achieved that objective with your design?
Yes, I 100% stand behind this, and it's twofold because, as Mike alluded to earlier, there are paths from a historic standpoint that a lot of this would not have to meet new construction requirements. So I think we have gone very conservative with the detection, the suppression system, and all the other components that we've integrated into this overall design to essentially meet what new code would require.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Dan, it looks like you have something.
I do. I talked to Matt about this last week, and again, I don't know how impactful this statement is or this awareness, but I just wanted to shed some light on the occupancy figures that you guys were discussing earlier on page 25 of Dom's report. And on the ground level, they're rated 641 occupants, second level 588, and the third floor 224. And I know there are some basic, some fundamental assumptions around this that potentially can't be changed, but I wanted to bring some realistic vision to the actual occupants that you would likely see in this scenario. And on the first floor, you know, it's stated at 641. And if you look at page 25, there are these little red and blue columns indicated throughout randomly in some instances, and I'm sure there's some strategy to it at some point. But the reality is, in that space of the entire first floor and the programming between our internal staff and guests that will be in the space, the first floor occupancy looks something like 120 to 140 people maximum. The tap room is not really built for much in excess of 60 to 70 people. And we've got office staff of potentially 30 and operations staff of about 20. Running a brewery is not really personnel intensive. There's a lot of space involved on that atrium floor where those red columns are that is really very sparsely occupied. And so, you know, we're really looking at something in the round of, you know, 1/4 of the actual stated occupants will be really what's on that floor. The second floor occupancy of 588, I think, rests probably somewhere, you know, really concentrated, obviously, in the restaurant and the rooftop patio, as well as office, and then the sleeping residences of the hotel room. But it's something probably in the 330 range. And the third floor really is just isolated to about 15 hotel guests in 7 rooms. And then the event space, which has a seated capacity of about 155. So I just wanted to mention that the reality of occupation in all 3 of these spaces are far below what Dom has modeled. And I'm not interjecting that to say that the number should be changed or anything. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thank you.
So can we kind of summarize what aspects of the code we are addressing? And I have a question for Mike since he's on the call. Mike, section 1006.3 specifically says the path of egress travel to an exit shall not pass through more than one adjacent story. So do you know anywhere else in the code where there's an exception to that rule?
I would say there are some for, like I said, atriums. There are some for, like, there's that open stairwell in a high-rise building that you can have connecting 3 floors up, high in the building. There are a number of alternatives or options that are there. I think the intent of chapter 4 on the atrium side and 1006 are really the same. They're talking about limiting, how many open floors people go through to get out. It's good that this is kind of one tenant kind of thing, that they operate the whole thing. And so the brewery pretty much going to control everything that goes on because it's all open to their space. They're part of the building.
Okay, that'll work.
But I think that the alternatives that are being offered take care of both situations. I don't think it's 2 separate code requirements. I really think they're saying the same thing, just in 2 different sections of the code.
Okay, so essentially what we're looking at is providing a smoke control system to allow 100% of the exit access to travel through the atrium. And it'll be to take care of this idea that exit access shall not travel more than 1 adjacent floor. So there's 2 things there. What about the narrowing of the path of egress from the upper levels down to the lower floor? That's another area of the code that would not be met. Is that something that we need to include in the list of things that the smoke control system is being used to accommodate?
Shouldn't be an issue because the code says you can't reduce it below the required width. You can obviously, if you start with a really wide egress path, you can narrow it, but you just can't narrow it below the required width. And I think from their occupant loads, they've shown that they've got plenty of width for the occupant load they have.
Okay. So it's basically the 2 open stairs and then, or having all the stairs open and then the exiting through all exits exiting through the atrium.
I think so. Scott, do you think that's appropriate? That's correct on the variance needed?
Yeah, I do agree. I think we are hitting on a few different issues. So yeah, I would agree to throw that in there with it.
The reason I'm bringing this up is just because somebody's going to have to make a motion and it's going to have to incorporate what aspects of the code we are trying to accommodate.
What the items or the variants are is what you're saying, Kyle. What the items of the variants are.
Right.
Well, I think the order or the the notice that went out really includes the only sections you can technically vote on. But I think that included the historic section, which allows that alternative, basically. Is that correct, Scott? I don't remember which sections were actually on the board note.
Yes, so on the board notice, we referenced to the IEBC, the fire protection supplement we added in, and we also referenced to 1019.3, which would require the stair enclosures over 2 stories. Or in this case, of course, they have to meet the other exception for stairs in an atrium.
You know, I did have one other thing I noticed, and I couldn't find where, I've got kind of the same situation on a project I'm working on. Isn't the required separation between the R1 and any other thing, I guess in this case, it'd probably be the industrial, isn't it required to be 1 hour rated? I think you guys had smoke resistive on there, but isn't it an occupancy separation, the door or the wall that all the doors are in for the sleeping rooms? I mean, that's not part of what this hearing is about, but I was just curious because I could use that on another project.
Yes, I do believe it's a 1 hour. I know there's a couple of exceptions, but I'm pretty sure that's the 1 hour barrier.
Yeah, with the dwelling unit requirement is for a 1 hour separation from any other dwelling unit. So it's going to require those to have a 1 hour enclosure.
Okay, and was that your intent, Jennifer, to have that 1 hour separation there?
Yes, sir. And also it's an existing masonry structure, so we should achieve that, no problem.
Okay.
Yes, and to that end, Jennifer, the rest, looking at the permit we have submitted here, a year or 2 ago for this project, we have it listed as 3B construction. So in other words, if that's a typo on our side, then so be it. That's what we have on record for now.
Is there a lid on the tap room? Is there a ceiling or a lid on that, or does the second floor close that off?
There is a lid, and then there is a actual elevated walkway above that.
Okay. And I'm seeing something that maybe looks like, are those skylights that looking down? I'm looking at the second floor north half appliance.
Yes, and that's to meet the same criteria that Daniel listed earlier regarding historic preservation, and not including any of the visual up to the atrium roof.
So the skylights are new?
Yes.
Okay. I really would like to see the second stairs in this thing. I'm seeing all these things added that saying we don't want to include the existing historic architecture of this space, but we're putting a lid on this. We're putting a 105-foot wall, but we can't take those 2 stairs adjacent to those 2 skylights and put a glass 1 hour enclosure. I can't see that not being appropriate and allowed by SHPO or National Park Service. We're making so many fundamental changes in the visual architecture of this atrium, and we're hanging our hat on 2 glass enclosures, which I think would take us 90% of down the pipe to even appeasing the National Park Service or SHPO on that. But we can at the second floor level put a floor in and put skylights in, but we can't do a vertical skylight on the stairwell.
I mean, if the stairwells were enclosed with the glass, I mean, you wouldn't even be here for a variance, would you?
Correct.
That's correct.
Rated glass. Yeah.
Could I
Either
propose
rated,
this
I think even in section 404, it talks about mullioned glass with, you know, they don't even describe it as a deluge system. They only require water to coat the glass. So it's not even, you know, it's not firelight. It's not, you know, some sort of ceramic glass. It's just a system that holds the glass in place and then water on it to the point that it's, you know, continuously coated. So, I mean,
I think they'd still be here for a variance though, Kyle, in my opinion, because I don't think that covers the 1 hour enclosure requirement. It covers the atrium requirement for the barrier, but not the enclosure requirement separated from the atrium. So I think that they would still be here if we did glass with, you know, say closely spaced sprinklers or a wetted surface. I think they would still have to seek a waiver.
Okay. It looks like Ron has his hand up and Scott has. Is it Scott? No, Ron, go ahead. Ron and Dan.
I was just going to kind of reiterate to what Kyle had said earlier. I mean, it's all the application was based upon, you know, section 1019.3, which refers back to section 713 about the enclosure having to be a rated enclosure. And there's the modeling, in my opinion, doesn't really show the 1 hour rating that's specified in section 713, which is referred to in section 1019 about a 1 hour enclosure on the stairs. And maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I understand all the other, you know, the atrium smoke and the 404 and 405 code being adhered to, but I'm not sure on the other part. So
maybe Dom could talk. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Maybe Dom could shed some light on how he, in his engineering opinion, that they are actually providing that objective.
Dom, before we get to you, I think Daniel, you had your hand up. Would you like to interject?
No, I'm sorry. That was just a residual for my points earlier. The only point I'll add, it's the visual occlusion thing is extremely nuanced when we're talking about the Park Service and the SHPO. And I understand the perception that putting the tap room inside the atrium could be perceived as a similar, occlusion to the glass enclosures on the stairwell. But I'm here to tell you, having spent probably dozens of hours working on this with our consultants, that's just not the case. The creation of the tap room inside the atrium in and of itself is not occupying a functional corridor inside the building, and the stairwells are just that, and they are considered to be a very architecturally relevant component of the atrium. The atrium space in and of itself does not have that relevance to that degree, basically. So I'll just throw that in there.
Thanks, Daniel. And yes, Tommy, this is Dom again. I agree. So, like, in general, we have a prescriptive code path. I think what we are providing is a performance-based alternative that meets the intent. So if the intent is the life safety of the occupants and maintaining tenable conditions, I feel that we strongly meet that. There's plenty of detection, notification, suppression, and other components that provide a inherent life safety scenario for the occupants of this building. Also, the fact that there are other avenues of, the point scale and things of that nature from an existing building where a lot of the upgrades and new construction requirements that we are meeting would not necessarily have to be adhered to. So that's kind of what I'm leaning on in my expert opinion is, from the intent of the code, when I have people going down an enclosed exit stair, yes, it's to protect those people so they could get out of the building safely. Whether that be from a fire scenario, smoke, or whatever the case may be, like that is the intent from the code perspective. It's not like we're protecting the building per se here. So the additional detection and the robust smoke control that's being provided accommodate those factors. If this was an existing building and you just had to bring it up to a minimum standard, a lot of the fire alarm and suppression components of this wouldn't even be considered at all.
The systems proposed to allow the variance are active systems. Fire stairs are passive. That fundamentally I have a problem with. And just to build upon that notion, what kind of backup systems, i.e. power, do we have to be certain that these active systems are going to operate?
As kind of discussed earlier with the makeup air components and things of that nature, we will be providing backup power, but all those aspects haven't been fully designed. So obviously the smoke control will need its backup power, the fire alarm will be battery backed up, but every component will have a redundancy to ensure successful operation.
Is that Mike Wilson, is that a code mandated redundancy? Are we talking about backup generators?
As a rule, that's what they would need to provide that, to keep that system operating. A lot of times, in high-rise buildings, you're talking about hours that, you need that power backed up. I don't know if that's what they need here or if, 30 minutes is enough because everyone's going to be out of the building. But they'll need some kind of backup. I've never seen somebody do a battery backup other than just the fire alarm system itself, but not for the building. But it's always been a generator, some type of generator.
And design team and owner is that what is contemplated for this project?
Backup power generation generally in the building as a comprehensive scope project was long ago determined not to be feasible, but this is very feasible. And Jennifer might be able to chime in, but we have discussed a number of smaller designated circuits for emergency power, both on immediate demand by a generator that would be in place, as well as longer term generator systems to integrate in the building, obviously with Oklahoma weather in the winter and the summer, frankly. But integrating backup power for certain life safety elements is just, in my mind, an absolute necessity. So when Dominic and his team determine exactly what those systems, what the needs will be and the specifications, they'll get integrated into the plans.
Hey, Daniel, the two stairs that are the least visible are the stairs on the south. Is that correct?
It's I guess visibility depends, I think part of the challenge with the building historically has always been, from an historic preservation standpoint on the inside, has been that you have kind of this spherical fisheye visibility because you have the walk-arounds on the second floor. And the walk-arounds, which are basically not around, but on the east and west corridors. So, I mean, arguably, the primary historic entrance to the Armory has always been the north entrance, but the true functional entrance of this property is really going to be the southeast and northeast corners because of their proximity to parking associated with all of the guests coming in. And so I don't know. Frankly, I would argue that probably 80 to 90% of your restaurant and restaurant and culinary guests are going to be entering through those eastern entrances, and particularly the southern one, because that's where we have about 160 parking spots further to the southeast of that entrance. So people walking in the building, that's the first kind of elevator, or the first staircase area they would see and walk into, frankly. So yeah, I think it's probably predominantly from an entry perspective, the southern side, but then you could argue they're entering the southern side, going to the second floor and looking at, the northern staircases as they walk north toward the restaurant entry and the tap room and things like that. So I don't know that I could really objectively qualify which one is more visible, frankly. I don't know if that answers your question. Probably not.
It's pretty close.
Okay.
I mean, it does give me a feel for which ones are used more, for sure. Thank you.
I do have a clarification for Daniel. Did you say that SHPO did or did not accept interior glass, whether it was rated or not rated? Did you say they did not want any interior glass? Did I hear that correctly?
They did not want any interior glass, and they have told us repeatedly since day one, effectively, that the Park Service, and through some other communication they've had with the Park Service, that it would not be approved. And so,
okay,
we're kind of in this pickle scenario where we have this life safety issue, but our belief all along has been, in working with Pool and Spur, that we could, with the fire curtains on the third floor and the smoke evac and the detection system robustness, that we could get to a solution that would get us there. Again, so it's just one of those issues that the Park Service and SHPO, between all of us here on this call, are some of the most frustrating people to work with, because as a developer, we have objectives, and we've given a lot on some items that have ended up being a real pain in the rear, and we've had to work around things. And the tap room in and of itself at first pass was just not something that they were willing to consider because of the visual occlusion when you walk in through the central north entry. And so we spent a lot of time, and frankly, a lot of extra money, building these skylights and, creating something that they would approve. And it's just, they are the most altruistic, least concerned about your objectives people on the planet. And whether those objectives are functional, financial, or safety related, they want us to keep railing that is 80 years old, and they want us to tear it out of the building, sandblast it, and repowder coat it and put it back in so that it's the same exact metal. And it's like, well, that metal's not safe. We have the 4-inch rule on railing for a reason, but now we've got to adapt to this 80-year-old railing and build in a 4-inch, cube system inset, and they don't care. We could put in brass railing, solid brass railing for, a price lower than what we're doing. And it's frustrating. I understand the frustration, and I understand everybody's concern. I'm probably been subject to more of it than anybody.
And then second question along the same lines. Are they doing the same with the exterior of the building? Or is it mostly the interior that they're concerned?
Generally, with historic preservation, in my experience, and both with, having worked on historic preservation projects for close to 20 years in my prior career, or a number of years in my prior career, and being a part of them, the external piece is always the most concerning piece for the Park Service. And so there are all kinds of regulations around viewing angles and what you can see from across the street and setbacks. Interior wise, a lot of times you're given a lot more leeway. I think the challenge with this particular property is the atrium itself is so bare bones that the Park Service and the SHPO look at it as, you know, identifying the most critical or visible architectural features. And frankly, in the atrium, it's the roof and the staircases is kind of the way they look at it. Windows, you know, in and out from a functionality standpoint, you know, have a different consideration. But yes, there are exterior modifications that we would love to make that we can't make. We would love to build a third floor balcony above the second floor balcony, but we can't add a structure to the outside of the building. And, you know, we've had to tackle, you know, even package HVAC units being visible, you know, above the parapets, and, you know, how we work on the comprehensive HVAC and how it has to nest on the southern side of the building versus the north. So yeah, there are infinite external and fewer internal really restrictions around renovating.
Not that I'm suggesting design, but it does appear that, you know, maybe an exterior stair would have been an easy solution, but
it absolutely would have been.
But you could not do that as well. Am I understanding that correctly? Wow.
Yeah, actually, we wanted to do exterior stairs.
That's a good solution. Yeah.
And that's an absolute no-go. I mean, anything that's visually disrupting the exterior of the building is, there's really no way to quantify it, but in my mind, and working with the SHPO, the Park Service, HP preservation consultants, exterior modifications are 10 times as difficult. And we have talked about life safety. I mean, Jennifer can attest to it. We've sat in on hours and hours of meetings with HP people and talked about life safety issues throughout the property, and there's just no budging. Would you opine differently, Jennifer?
No, I completely agree.
Daniel, I'm very sympathetic to your plight with HP, National Park Service. As an architect, I've dealt with that for 40 years as well. Some of the most frustrating things you can go through. So I'm sympathetic about your direction. I would like to float an idea, because I am vitriously opposed to allowing for open stairs in this, even though we have and I trust the report that Poole did, and I just have a fundamental problem with life safety with some non-enclosed stairs. I would like to propose that your variance is denied and that you come back to us with a letter from the National Park Service saying that we're pulling the plug on you, on your tax credits, without those 2 stairs. And I would suggest, not trying to be your architect, because obviously you have a good architect on this project, that the stairs that are at the tap room at the north side makes sense to enclose those with glass. Use the fire rated glass and make it as minimal as possible, and see how that floats. I'm not the one making the decision in this hearing, but I think that would be an approach that could maybe get you through this wicket. So that's what my thoughts are. I'm throwing that out as only my opinion. If that's not a direction I'm telling the board to take, I do know how difficult they are. I just think, with my feelings, I think it needs another push with SHPO. SHPO's pretty much a cakewalk compared to the National Park Service, is my opinion. But as another push saying, hey, you know, we're denied. Let's see where this takes us. And I understand there's additional money, and I understand your railing decisions. I've shaken my head so many times at existing stairway railings that were so non-compliant that you know, they make me nervous even having them in one of my buildings. like you said, you could do something twice as nice, twice as easy for half the money. And I understand the exterior things. And just on a different note, since we're talking about this, guys, how did they allow you to have that exterior second floor garden up there? Because I know about that. I've been down the road with HVAC units, shielding, sight line studies. I've been all down that line. I'm wondering how they were able to, or how you guys were able to manage that.
There are really two things kind of to our advantage. One, one of the biggest issues that the Park Service has problems with is cutting new openings in a wall. And obviously, to get in and out of that second floor patio area, we had to cut 2 new doors in the wall. And that was probably, I mean, Jennifer can attest to it again, probably the hardest thing to get approved. But at the end of the day, the saving grace is that when you are standing on the east side of Walnut Avenue across the street at the threshold site level, which is not really defined, they don't say, at 5'6" above the ground level, they just say when a person is standing over there. And I have problems because I'm 6'2". So when I stand over there, I see different things than somebody who's 5'7". But so there were 2 things. One, the doors and the tops of the windows were not visible from across the street. And secondly, we were able to set back what is essentially the railing system, because the parapet on the second floor patio is about, I would say, 22 to 24 inches, Jennifer. We're lowering the floor a little bit with the roof structure, which really isn't visible anywhere. But that setback of the railing on that yellow line is set back from the parapet such that at its required height of what I believe to be 42 inches, Jennifer, Matt, for a railing, that the top of that railing is not visible from across the street on the other side of Walnut. And so those were the 2 big issues that basically allowed us to put the patio on that second floor.
Very ingenuitive. Very good. I was just curious of that because, like I said, I have a lot of empathy for your thoughts on these matters.
Sure. Thanks.
So Dom, are those shutters or the curtains that are being used on the 3rd floor? Do they provide any fire rating, or were they just smoke?
No, those are rated shutters.
They're actually shutters.
Correct.
They're not just like some sort of fabric curtain. They're a shutter.
It's rated opening protectors for that whole length on both the east and west side.
And again, I'm not trying to play architect here, because I think you have a very good architect on your team. But have you given any consideration to using those shutters, at least for, and perhaps some meeting doors to enclose the stairs? So the shutters would essentially be hidden until they're operated, and then the meeting doors could be held back and just become part of the wall, still give you the open effect. But is there any possibility of investigating something like that? I'm looking at, I'll tell you guys, I'll share this with you, but I'm looking at this view. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. And this, this is the stair, I guess this is the northeast stair. I just wonder, is there any way to accommodate, if you don't want to use the glass or you can't use the glass, something that was hidden behind this beam that might effectively do what I would say my concern, as well as David's, of enclosing that stair somehow. Just an idea.
Jennifer, can you add some about the how the shutters were going to be occluded from view behind the existing beams, and why that is different at the stairwells in terms of exposed structure?
Sure, I can. So along the corridors, along the atrium, the beam has a depth that allows for like a recess along the corridor. So we've got room for the shutter piece to be kind of tucked away and hidden from view from the atrium. However, when you get to the stair, essentially the underside of the stair, the formwork that they used turns right into the concrete, like the beam essentially, and comes right back up. So there's no way for us to tuck it up underneath and hide it.
I see.
Yeah, it's not that we didn't want to pursue those scenarios. We've already pursued them and have found ways that we couldn't get around them.
So I don't want to be presumptuous, but did I hear a motion then from David a while back?
That was a suggestion for an idea, and a plea for some other way of doing this. But if we're ready for that, I'm not sure. I'm trying to go through my list of pieces, and Jennifer, Mike, and Scott, maybe you can help me through this. That if I make a motion to deny the variance, am I denying every portion of this, or can I just deny the portion that has to do with cleanly with that? With this has to do with kind of stairs being enclosed.
You're denying this particular request. If they come back with a different request, or the situation changes and something changes, they could still come back and ask. Otherwise, they have to wait. But the other way, if you're wanting them to go back to HP to try for something, then you might just want to continue it. I don't know.
I think continuing it would be the most expeditious way to get to where we want to be, rather than starting fresh with a new application, Scott.
Agreed.
If that's the case, I'll make a motion to continue it unless there's other discussion that needs to go on.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So I do have a question. So can they bring a new concept, I guess?
Absolutely. Anything they want. Absolutely.
Can we discuss our concerns that if they're addressed in the next one, it would make us feel better? Can I address that?
Yeah, I'm trying my best to have an open mind with open stairs.
Okay. So for me, if we could address, and David brought up a fantastic point about passive versus active fire protection for life safety. And so my concern all along has been, does this, and we're heavily relying on the smoke control system. I have a lot of questions about the makeup air and whether or not that makeup air will function as, number one, will the exhaust system function correctly in an emergency with, let's say, no power? So is there a generator? What does that look like? What's it connected to? Are the rolling doors on the generator? How do the rolling doors function in terms of how do they fail? Do they fail closed? Do they fail open? How does that work? Like, what does that sequence looks like to make sure, because we're replacing a passive fire protection system with an active fire protection system. So for me, it's making 100% sure that active fire protection smoke exhaust system functions correctly under almost every circumstance as a protected stair would.
That
So
brings
we-
up another
I'm
question.
looking for-
That
we have a
brings up
second.
a question about whether or not the smoke control system would even be required if the two stairs were enclosed and they used the shutters. That would be another, I mean, you could probably eliminate, I think that would be something that we could probably entertain with the two enclosed stairs. Do you even need the smoke control system with the shutters separating the third floor? Unless I'm misunderstanding something. Is that, Mike, do you kind of see that?
Kyle, that's the intent.
That opens the applicant's horizon for alternates, I think, so. Well, let's look at that. So I'll second Ron Roke's motion to continue the case.
Yeah, and Matt, the way I'm thinking about continuing, you guys have done a lot of time, put a lot of time, effort in all of this, and rather than us just saying, no, we don't like it, and then you have to go back, and it makes it harder to come back. If we continue it, it gives you the option that we have not denied it, we're just asking for some additional information.
Yeah, I think what Tommy Willis said would be very germane to my decision as well. Like I said, I have that visceral problem with not having a passive fire stair in a building. I don't like the idea of me going to sleep at night knowing someone has or could be maimed or killed in a building that we're making individual law on. So I have concerns on that, and maybe with some of your going back and solving some of the things that Tommy said, some of the things that the board has said, we can head down that pike or push SHPO and especially National Park Service one more time and say, hey, we're up against the wall, because I think that's enough said about that. So I'll make a motion to continue. Shall we vote? We can all vote one at a time.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, guys. This is Dom. I actually got cut off for about, I don't know, maybe a minute. I heard what Kyle was saying in regards to, or I heard what Tommy said initially in regards to the backup requirements for the smoke control, and then I kind of missed what Kyle was saying. Any chance that I could hear that before you guys vote to continue?
Did you hear the part where I talked about the shutters on the stairs? Did you hear that part?
No, that's where I got disconnected. Sorry.
Well, I had asked the question about whether shutters were considered maybe for the stairs as an alternate to try to enclose them with glass. And then Jennifer pointed out that the stair structures, being cast in place stairs, didn't allow for the concealing of the shutters, so that.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got that part. Sorry, I thought because you had spoke a little bit after Tommy as well.
The only other thing I pointed out is when Tommy had said, if it's continued and you have an opportunity to investigate different options, one option might be that if, somehow, some way we come to the a way of successfully enclosing the stairs that everybody agrees with, and that, we can get through SHPO and all that, that perhaps, the smoke evacuation system doesn't need to be provided either.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I think the original design did account for that. It accounted for 2 enclosed stairs and no smoke control based on where those deployable protection were provided. So yeah, we attempted that route initially.
Just one thing that I'll just note for timing and generally managing expectations. My suspicion is that if we go back to the Park Service to again push this, it'll probably be 30 to 90 days before we come back to you guys with any kind of progress. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's unfortunate. I I would hope that there's some way you could expedite that.
Yeah, time will tell.
We're not in the on this board to deny cases. I think you can maybe tell that we try to push as much as we can to the limits of our I guess to our limits of what we think is appropriate.
Sure, understood.
Okay.
You know,
We have a
I was
motion on
even,
second.
when I first looked at this, I was even thinking maybe there might be some way to present enclosure of the just second floor and first floor on 2 stairs. But, you know, I think that again depends a lot on what sort of equivalencies are being provided, you know, that are beyond what's required by the code. I mean, your largest assembly load, other than the first floor, I mean, your largest assembly load is the roof and the area on the second floor. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So, you know, just throwing out ideas on it.
Okay. Any more conversation before we vote? Scott, would you call the votes, please?
Okay. We'll start with Tricia Hadley.
Yes.
Okay. Tommy.
Yes.
Ron Rope.
Yes.
Jim. Oh, he's not here. That's right. Kyle Lombardo.
Yes.
And David Krasinski.
Yes. The motion passes to continue the case. That concludes our cases for the day. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck, guys. Hope we can come up with a good solution.
Appreciate it.